With an eviction moratorium issued by CDC this week, do you need to be additionally cautious to prevent unscrupulous evictions that may run afoul to that order? And what's happening with free grant money? Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Afternoons LALATE, part of our 3.5-hour programming block here on LALATE every day. Now the net's most watched financial news channel. Thank you for tuning in. Boy, we have incredible details today about rent, which is every day on Afternoons LALATE after the check, FPUC, hazard pay FPUC. And here we go. You know, the CDC created an order earlier this week, which creates and establishes an eviction moratorium and mortgage forbearance. It ensures that millions and millions of Americans who are facing eviction in their apartment or home are not evicted. And it also ensures that people who rent their home are not foreclosed upon. But now, as detailed before that was even issued, that order, after it was issued, and yet again today, new shocking details about what you have to ensure to do that you're not the subject or the victim of an unscrupulous landlord or bank. And additionally, new details today about when you might be getting some grant money for rent. Let me get to the second thing first. Rent grant money is different than eviction moratorium. Ultimately, when you have an eviction moratorium, you have a mortgage forbearance, it doesn't relieve you of the obligation to pay money to your landlord or your bank. But the problem with the current orders issued by CDC is that they all have a time frame, an expiration date. They're expiring, and they're expiring about as fast as Nancy Pelosi's milk in the refrigerator. They expire December 31st, which is literally just around the corner. It's not a very long-term relief. As you see, some states may do a more stringent bill. This is important to understand that states, by order of the federal government, are allowed to do something more restrictive, more protective of you, but can't do something less restrictive. So, for example, in the state of Delaware, they have protections all the way until the pandemic is over or far into 2021. But for purposes of the federal eviction moratorium and mortgage forbearance, they expire in December 31st. So on that day, you have to come up with all the rent that you may be back due on during these recent weeks. And if you don't, then you're evicted January 1st. Happy New Year. Evicted January 1st, thick of winter, snow. You see the visual. It's not a good one. So ultimately, where is the rent grant money coming from the federal government? That would likely be in the in the third stimulus package. Next week will be a second stimulus package for checks, for FPUC, for K-12 schools, money for schools, and finally for testing. It's a $500 billion package. It's narrowly tailored. It's not the skinny bill. It's not the HEALS Act, and it's not the HEROES Act. It's a brand new bill that really only has those two big items for you: stimulus checks and FPUC. Remember, none of those conflict with either one, nor they conflict with rent, which I'm talking about right now. But it won't have rent. So where will rent land? It will land in the next bill that comes right after that. And that bill is a third stimulus package. The third stimulus package is valued at $650 billion and will include things like rent, food stamps, PPP, state and local. That is the one that's going to cause more, and hazard pay, and that is the one that's going to cause more negotiations to be more drawn out. Republicans understood that there was a problem, and the problem was that certain things could not be agreed upon quick enough, and other things that need to go out right away were very much agreed upon. The things that were very much agreed upon need to go out right away were stimulus checks, FPUC. So that's the plan, is to get that out right within 1 week. Then they're going to come back and talk about rent grants. The rent grants would cover multiple months. You would get the money from the federal government, and it would also cover utilities. very little guidance is given about where Republicans were during these negotiations. What's very sad and troubling and really not reassuring is that during these negotiations that unsettled for weeks on end, we were told very little about what the offers were. What I have been detailing in big special reports on this channel in the last week is that the HEALS Act introduced to the Senate from Republicans was not supported by the president, not supported by the White House. A Republican bill for the second stimulus package was not supported by the White House, which called the bill irrelevant. So where's the position of the president on rent aid? Where's the position of Steve Mnuchin on rent aid? I don't know. How much has Steve Mnuchin offered in negotiations of 2.5 weeks with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi on rent aid? I don't know. Has he ever said it? No. Has she ever said it? No. Has he ever said, I'm not going to give it? I don't know. Has she ever said that he didn't offer it, that he wouldn't give it? I don't know. As we sit here today, we have a lot of I don't knows from people who simply just don't tell us. And when we talk about rent aid, it's one of the most important things of the second stimulus package, whether it's in the second stimulus package or the third stimulus package, and yet we don't see it. And so what could come next? Well, what's going to come right now is eviction moratoriums and mortgage forbearance. Let me go over that right now. CDC. Yeah, that's CDC. Earlier this week, in a historical move, established an eviction moratorium for an agency that has nothing to do with housing. Everyone thought it was going to come from HUD, and it came from CDC, but it came from CDC. And it created an eviction moratorium that says you cannot be evicted. More about that in a second. The question that this video poses, and it's not a novel question, it's been addressed before, and it's been addressed by this channel before, and it's been addressed by Harris, the VP nominee to Biden, is what do you do for landlords who are unscrupulous and want to violate the eviction moratorium? This is what you have to do. If you're a viewer of this channel, you need to go to the CDC's website and you need to get a copy of the order. You then need to see the CDC's instructions about doing a declaration. There's a requirement that you do a declaration to ensure that you are eligible for the eviction moratorium. The declaration says something to the effect of, I made this amount of money last year. I'm eligible for this eviction moratorium. I can't make rent because of COVID-19 and hence I need an eviction moratorium protection. And you need to follow the guidance of that CDC order, which I believe, but I'm not certain, says you have to give that to the landlord. That's the first step. The next step is the landlord can still evict you for other reasons, including their health. Yeah. And the problem with the eviction moratorium order from CDC is it's a protection for you for rent issues, but it's not a protection issue for you if the landlord defaults to other excuses to evict you. And that's likely what's to happen because nowhere in this eviction moratorium is there a penalty clause. Without a penalty clause, landlords will just do what they want. There's two different versions of what landlords could do as a do what they want scenario. The first is they just violate the law. They just do whatever they want and they evict you and they say, who cares about the eviction moratorium? The second one is they will say that you were ineligible. They will say that you made too much money in 2019 or that you haven't proven up your eligibility of 2019 earnings or that you simply just don't fall in the eligibility criterion, whether it's true or untrue. Third, even without using any of those two default excuses, they may say, I'm evicting you for a thing that has nothing to do with rent. And sadly, the CDC order says they can do that. Among the reasons they can do it is if they say you're a threat to their health. What? How are you a threat to their health? I mean, this is the case of landlords that don't live in their own apartment building. How are you a threat to their health? Now, you can certainly see where this is going. For example, let's say you contract COVID-19 and your landlord does live in your building, or you rent a room in a house, and or you rent a duplex and the owner lives in the other part of the duplex, the two apartment building, 2-unit building. They may say, I want to evict you because you have COVID. I don't want to get COVID. It's just not that much there. It's a step in the right direction, but it's not inherently great. Now, when it's talking about banks and foreclosures and your threat of losing your home, that's a whole other ball of wax. And banks have less excuses to default to than a landlord, but they're certainly up to the same potential to do it. When I give these warnings, it's not because I want to make you nervous, it's not because I want to scare you, it's because I want to tell you facts. And the facts are, this has happened before. When? The first stimulus package. Under the first stimulus package, the CARES Act of March, this was rampant. It created an eviction moratorium, and landlords just violated left and right. So Harris, the VP nominee, said, hey, you can't do this. I'm a lawyer. I prosecute these cases on a regular basis, and here you have an order that says you can't do this. But landlords are doing it because there's no penalty clause. There's no ability to prosecute the landlord. There's no criminal penalty. There's no civil penalty. And the tenants may not have funds to sue the landlord or block the eviction proceeding. So she proposed a standalone bill to the second stimulus package, which guess who sort of, ignored the Temple of Doom, that said, hey, you need to create all these other safe causes to ensure that when you have an eviction moratorium that it works properly. As we sit here today, the things that you need to know are the following. Eviction proceedings don't move that fast. That's a great element of news to you. They don't move that fast. So as we sit here now in September, 3rd or 4th, and maybe you're starting to get the threats of an eviction proceeding, and you have the CDC order in place, you follow my guidelines, you're all ready to go, and yet the eviction proceeding is starting, then ultimately you may still be wound up and delayed and stalled in the courts with the landlord just completely unscrupulous through the entire eviction moratorium period of December 31st. So in that case, it may provide you relief. Ultimately, tenants need this relief now. And however flawed it is, however corrupt it is, however misapplied it is, and how lack of robust the provisions are, it's better to have something than nothing. Ultimately, I'm here to help, and I've helped viewers a lot with rent issues all along. When this channel first launched, I didn't have rent as one of the initial concerns because homelessness in March was not a concern. Today, it's a rampant concern. Most of the viewers of my channel who became homeless in the last 4 weeks. A lot of my viewers are now tinkering on the edge of homelessness because of the delays of a certain person to get you stimulus relief. And what I've always said is look for grant money. And now, unfortunately, I have to say it again. Guess why? Because there's suggestions that the CDC order also says you have to make a good faith effort to look for grant money for rent grants in your area. And if you don't qualify. It's a lot of this got to do and got to do that. Bottom line is it's information. And I'm trying to empower you with information about what you have to do because doing nothing doesn't get you anywhere. Coming up this evening is Evenings LA that starts at 6:45 with the check, a 1-hour programming block. Go to the front of the channel, subscribe, and hit the alert button so you get an alert when a new video goes live, and also ensure that there's a red button next to your name. If there isn't, you may not have subscribed correctly. So go to this pinned comment of this video in which I explain how to ensure that you're subscribing. I respond to comments for people who subscribe before comments that people have not subscribed. We're part of an incredible community trying to reach 250,000 subscribers in the next week. I think we can do it, so let's do it. Also share these videos on Facebook, share them on Twitter. Hit the like to this video because this video ultimately appears higher in ranks every time you like the video. Sharing it on Facebook, sharing it on Twitter, that also really helps. Coming up this evening is Evenings LA. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, stay focused, and save LA for more.